condensed version of our normal show where instead of 2 or 3 of us are talking about a movie we've recently watched, it's just going to be one of us. My name is Vaux, and today I'll be giving you my thoughts and feelings and a review of the 2020 movie Monsters of Man, which was released in early December of 2020, on the 8th, I believe, actually. Monsters of Man seems to be promising. I was scrolling through a list of, recently released movies or movies that were going to be released before the end of the year, and this one caught my eye. Director Mark Toya, as a directorial debut, he explains the movie as this. A robotic company teams up with a corrupt CIA agent undergoing an illegal, unsanctioned military operation, dropping 4 prototype robots into a suspected drug manufacturing camp in the Golden Triangle that no one will ever miss. The mission is to prove that this robotic company is worthy enough of winning a lucrative military contract. 6 doctors on a good cause witness the brutal slaughter of an innocent village and are forced into a deadly game of cat and mouse as they become the new targets. At first glance, I know that sounds not bad, and I thought to myself as well, okay, I can be down with some sci-fi robot action, but let me tell you, a whopping 2 hours and 11 minutes later, I regretted my initial thoughts on that. I have 4 pages of notes on this movie, and I actually ended up stopping about an hour and 45 minutes into it, just stopping completely. If you're new to the show, then you know that Luke and Natasha and I, when we watch and review a movie, we do take notes. But not a single movie in the year 2020 that we got to watch exceeded the 3-page mark. So this one was definitely going to be a doozy. Now I'll continue down the list of the notes that I have, and I'll try not to jump around too much when we get to each point. But that might happen, and I'll do my best to connect them all together or keep them in order. So the opening scene's actually awesome, and it gave me a little bit of hope for this B-rated movie. We see a woman who's running away from a robot that appears in the background. She gets shot. The robot approaches her, and I thought he was just going to shoot her right in the ground. But then we see that the robot decides to stomp on her, and right as the foot goes to make contact with the body, it makes a cut, which is great. Good hook, really got me going, and a little bit more amped for the movie as we continued through these weird credit lines that went rolling. I will definitely tell you that if you're watching this movie, when the credits roll in the beginning, you might want to fast forward if you have any kind of epilepsy issues. There's a lot of glitching going on, and if you're watching it like I do in a completely dark room, it was kind of weird, and it kind of hurt my eyes a little bit, which isn't really the first time this has happened to us in the past couple of weeks. And I say us, I guess I actually watched this movie alone, so that's just habit of me saying that. But if you haven't watched our Possessor review, we talk about that as well, because there's some trippy scenes that happen in there. This isn't trippy, though. This is just a really bad effect that they threw on in After Effects while editing the movie, and it gets obnoxious really, really fast. A couple of notes from the beginning portions of this movie as well is that the acting is incredibly robotic. To give you an example of this, there's a group of scientists or maybe tech guys that are actually going to be controlling the robots, and they're picked up by the CIA agent I mentioned in the summary. The one tech guy was sweating. Wherever they're at in the world, it's very, very hot and humid. So he asks if there's any AC in the van that they were using to drive to the new location that they were going to be camped out at. And the CIA agent just pulls a gun out, and instantly the guy says, "Oh, okay, it's fine." So to me here, this needed to be a little bit extended. There's no dramatic pause, and in fact, that's one of my notes. Have you ever heard of a dramatic pause? To have this very quick-paced dialogue and action, it didn't leave me a whole lot of room for comprehension. In fact, after the scene, I was like, wait, what? That guy just pulled a gun on him because he asked about air conditioning? I get it. He's the big bad guy, if you will. He's the corrupt CIA agent. But it was just so unnatural from what we are used to seeing in AAA movies. You got to give the audience a little bit of time to comprehend what's happening instead of flashing things back and forth between their eyes, which this isn't the first time this movie will do this either. A positive note from here, there's some interesting cuts that explain the passage of time for their car ride. It shows the van in the same exact from the camera angle from the rear, but it's cut, so it shows it in different locations. I believe one's a jungle, one's a forest, one's like a marketplace or something like that, and then them pulling up to the building they're going to be camped out in. Actually really cool. I wish it was extended out just a little bit longer so I could look around and see the locations that they were in. But other than that, it was a good use of the editing. So there's some bad situations that the writer and director put these characters in. And I'm not talking about, they're going to be killed by robots. I'm talking about, this belongs into a slapstick comedy or a children's show. For example, when the CIA agent and one of the tech guys are in the jungle, they're setting up antennas so that the robots can be controlled remotely. While they're setting these antennas up, the drug lords of the area kind of pass through. And the CIA agent grabs the tech guy and says, "Quick, hide and be quiet, bad guys," or something along those lines. This is me paraphrasing. And the tech guy actually sneezes as they're hiding. So that's a little weird and not very serious. Not to mention the bad guy at the end of the group stops, and he seems to look at the camera at one point, which is cringy for me being a film student. I hate when I catch that in movies. Looks all over except for in the area that these guys are laying at, which is right in front of him, and then leaves. So that's what I mean by bad situations and childish writing. Another example is in the same exact location. While they're setting up the antennas, the guy says, "We're not getting any signal. Try wiggling the antenna back and forth." And the guy just grabs the antenna, and then he says, "Oh, yep, we got signal now," without even really moving it. It's just, I don't know. It just seemed so lackluster, as these guys are supposed to be the tech giant wizards of the movie. So we do end up seeing this team of young doctors that are there, either on a good cause trip, and I think that they were just trying to help the locals with the issues that they're having. But the problem that I see with this movie, and we get this a lot with other movies, is that there's groups, or in a group, there are different people of ethnicities, which is fine. That's great. We have the black character, the Asian character, the gay character, the straight character, the white character. It doesn't matter that, we get a bunch of different people mingling together. The issues that a lot of times movies have is making the characters so unrelatable with each other. Now, in horror movies, we usually get the gay character dies first, the black character dies first, or the Asian character dies first. And we actually talked about that in our Freaky review, as they make reference to that being the slapstick horror thing to do. It's just the way that the things have been laid out to happen. However, in this movie, the only character that was so disconnected from the group was the black character, who is the one we actually see in the beginning of the movie get killed. So there's just a little foreshadowing to my next note after this one. She says y'all a lot, hinting at that she was either brought up in the South, which she doesn't have a Southern accent, so I don't think that's the way it was supposed to be, relayed as, or that she was brought up in more of a impoverished or, hood community, which is what the vibe I got from it. And it made me uncomfortable. Everyone else in the group is very tight-knit. They seem to care about each other. But she was just the, one-off that just didn't connect with the rest of them. It was strange to me to see that. And I'm definitely going to give them a thumbs down for that. Because we've seen movies, again, referencing Freaky, they do a good job with the different ethnicities and pulling everyone together, because they have the gay character, because they have the black character, because they have the white character, and they're all a great team. It's just, I don't know, it needed better writing. But there's a point 45 minutes into the movie where we see the opening scene again after the robots land into the jungle. And I'm jumping ahead just a little bit because these 2 points connect. That is so unneeded and unnecessary. It's almost this is the point where this movie starts to slowly go downhill. Although, yes, it took 30 whole minutes for any kind of action in a sci-fi action movie, this is the point where I knew the rest of this movie is going to be a rough ride. Why are we seeing the same scene with a little bit more gore on the end of it again 45 minutes after we saw it? You already had me hooked with that. The problem is that they didn't show any time passage between the two. They showed the opening scene, and then they showed this scene. And in between those two, we didn't see a thing, at least I didn't, let me know if I'm wrong, where it says 3 weeks earlier, or 1 day earlier, or whatever it may be. I had assumed that the robots were already in trial, maybe in another country, and that is one of the victims of this country. Little do we know until this point, that is the same scene. It's the same person. It's a very big letdown, and it's really sloppy editing and writing, in my opinion. So I want to touch on the special effects just a little bit, because I skipped over a couple of notes that I had as far as special effects goes while talking about that point. We do see the robots touch down in this jungled area, and the one parachute doesn't open properly and it hits the ground and gets destroyed, supposedly. However, when we see the other 3 of the 4 start moving around, they all look good besides the one who decides to walk out of the parachute that he was kind of tangled in. In that portion, it looks like it's just a really bad green screen mistake. A gentleman maybe had been walking through there if it was an actual guy in a green screen suit, but they forgot to put the special effects on there. It's really quick, it's really fast, you gotta go back and watch it if you want to see it, but it just looks poorly done. There's another scene where someone gets shot in the hand, and I cannot remember for the life of me who it was, if it was the ex-Navy SEAL guy that we see, or one of the doctor people, I don't know. However, his bullet wound only shows up part of the time. You could see it on one side of his hand, but on the other. Sometimes we see both of it, and we can see through his hand, which was a good effect. And sometimes we don't see it at all on the same hand that he just got shot on. So it was one of those, this movie was probably slapped together real fast to meet the deadline and missed some special effects, which again, lowers it another point. Another thumbs down on the end for that. There's actually another part too that happens just after we kind of see like the robot and the chick stomp on the robot stomp on the chick's head. There's just a scene where it shows a CGI spider as the major's getting more and more pissed because now we have a rogue robot, and that kind of ties in with the story a little bit, and I'll get there. But it reminded me from our 3 from Hell review, there was just a scene that was the best scene in the damn movie where it shows a lizard. And why it was needed, it wasn't. And why the CGI spider was needed, it wasn't. It was just there, and I was mind blown by it because that was the best CGI we got thus far. So as the story progresses, we find out that the robot that we thought was destroyed is actually alive, and the little boy who is the son of the drug lord, and also, if I'm connecting this properly, the son of the daughter, or the girl who's dating the Navy SEAL. It's a little bit sloppy. Discovers this robot with his friends and pulls out like a chip and allows him to go kind of rogue and start learning on his own. So the rogue robot then decides to find an iPad of some sorts. I think it was after the raid on the village, and downloads the entire history of mankind in seconds in the middle of the jungle where no one can get service. I can hardly get service in my own house. How is this robot supposed to get service on an iPad in the middle of bumfuck nowhere Egypt in the jungle? It just didn't, I don't know, a little sloppy again. Which leads me to my next sloppy note, as these other 3 robots are trying to kill everyone in this village now while being tested. How does this group of doctors, an ex-Navy SEAL, a drug lord, a mother and her child, dodge all of these bullets, all while running through the jungle and not getting hurt in any way, shape, or form for the first encounter of this? We see these robots slaughtering people, shooting people left and right. In fact, we find out that after one of them's destroyed, that they blow up and clear out a whole like 300-foot radius in a mini nuke. How are these people, the focus of the story, surviving all of this and being picked off one by one in a classic horror slasher way? It is just mind-blowing. There was a certain point, and I mentioned this earlier, where I just stopped taking notes. So I just want to highlight a few other things that went through, as the story is the same thing over and over again. Group gets together, thinks they're safe, robots show up, then get shot at, avoid, one person dies, repeat. The only thing that keeps it slightly interesting is that there's a fourth robot who's gone rogue, and he's trying to figure out what he needs to do, and then the other robots start attacking him, so he doesn't know if he needs to kill the humans or kill the robots, and that even then is overdone, boring, and very, very distracting. It's like a really bad birthday cake. You might have put salt in it instead of sugar, because every time you take a bite, the initial frosting, this tastes good, and then the sour, salty aftertaste makes you want to vomit it all back up. The second half loses all of its steam. There's a 30-second to a 2-minute action scene, and then a 3-minute melodrama boring story draw out. In fact, after the drug lord guy dies, the kid cries on him for probably 3 minutes, saying the same thing over and over again. You couldn't have cut that down to a 10 or 15-second scene, and that way it would have been way more dramatic instead of 3 minutes of the kid crying and calling for his papa? Oh boy. The action scenes, this is where it's most depressing for me. They're actually decent. The special effects here, until about the last 45 minutes, are great in the action scenes. The blood's cool, the explosions are cool, the gunplay looks real, and there's even a point where one of the doctors is running away from the robot and he actually trips on vines. It gets wrapped around his foot, and it looks completely natural. So if it was, good on the film director and the cameraman to keep that going, to keep that as a pivotal point of the movie and roll it. Because it looked natural, it looked real, and it was great. Up until about the last half hour of the movie, we didn't get a whole lot of front-faced, fully focused of the robots, at least that I really picked up on. When we saw the robots, it was 10 to 15, maybe 30 seconds on screen, them walking around. It wasn't up close, it was further away. It was well done. However, once we get to the ending portion of this movie, the robots just start full-fledged fighting each other, and it gets to the point where the scenes are so fast because the CGI looks so bad that it's hard to comprehend again. It was like I mentioned in the beginning, where there was no dramatic pauses. At this point, it felt like I was just watching some really fast strobing with some, laid in, chopped together portions of action. It got distracting, it got boring, and I found myself sitting on my phone more and more throughout this whole movie, which led me to miss a few things. I know I did, and I'm not even mad about it because I don't want to go back and watch them again. The story just dragged at this point. We got it. It was 2 hours long, in fact, just over 2 hours at the 2 hour and 11 mark to hit. I just didn't need that much in this movie. Yes, there was constant going back and forth between, okay, the CIA guy is trying to work with the government illegally to try to get this company together so they could do things and he could make money off of it. Got it. But then there was like this Navy SEAL deserter, and then there's this weird group of doctors that get mixed into it. I just felt like it was a big slapped together movie. But the worst part about this movie is that they did the same thing for 2 hours long. There was no difference between any of the characters trying to do the same, different things. It was running around in circles, trying to avoid robots from killing you. At the end of this all, they even give you a nice little teaser saying that there could possibly be a sequel. And goddamn if there is, I'll watch it for you, and you don't have to do anything about it. We rate movies a little differently on this show from other people. We like to say, pick it if it's good, flick it if it's bad, and to top it all off with the cherry and sprinkles, we give it a 1 out of 10 rating. For me, this is a flick. 2 hours of my time thrown out the window, to the point where I sat down in my basement, rambled by myself into a microphone just so you guys didn't have to watch it. 4 out of 10. Not a good movie. terrible writing, robotic acting, and just plain old repetitive, boring bullshit. This was the first episode. If this was a train wreck, let me know. I want to hear about it so we can do better. We're trying to keep content fresh on the channel for you. We're trying to get subscribers. So if you liked hearing my bitch ass ramble for 15, 20, however long minutes this is, give me a like. Give me a subscribe and give me a comment so I know if I should continue or if I should shut it down and remove them completely. My name is Vaux. This is Pick It and Flick It One Shots, Episode 1, Monsters of Man. Thank you so much for listening.